Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, the word of the day, the subject of the show is escalate. You can see that, of course, from the thumbnail. And I decided not to go in and use the nuclear annihilation, nuclear holocaust sort of explosion in the background there. But we do see two people that we're going to talk a lot about today. Allegedly, apparently, the story is that breaking news, a Russian missile attack, something apparently is going on in Poland. The Russians have been bombarding Ukraine for some time. And apparently, one of those missiles just kind of went, ooh, pa, and blew up in Poland, allegedly. We're going to take a look at this story because we have various reports skidding in here that we do need to talk about. You can see a little bit of a preview on what the crater might look like. This came out on Twitter. It looks like a pretty big crater there. You can see a lot of damage. If that hit, a vehicle, somebody's in that vehicle, they very well could be dead and gone. But we've got different reports. We'll check in to the Fox News. They're giving us a report. The AP is confirming this. CNN says that they've confirmed it with Polish authorities. We're going to jump over to the Pentagon because the Pentagon is basically keeping quiet about the whole thing, right? CNN, Fox, everybody's talking about it. But this Pentagon spokesman, a brigadier general, he said, we've got no information about this, no corroboration about it. The media was sort of scratching their head on this thing. They're like, wait a minute, what? How does the AP know about this? How does CNN, Fox News, everybody else know about this? But you don't. So they asked him 3 separate times, and he answered 3 separate times, I've got no information for you, which is very curious. And so we'll unpack all of that. State Department has no questions or it has nothing else to say about it. Chuck Schumer's got no comment on it. And so our totally inept government is just continually totally inept, which we will talk about. Meanwhile, Joe Biden returned from a trip overseas. Apparently, he missed dinner when he was over there. A pretty important dinner. You fly halfway around the world to go join this thing. He missed it. Is it COVID? Is it something? Nobody really knows. But we've got Biden. He's also, sort of wearing this outfit. This video has gotten a lot of views on the Twitter sphere. And we've got a clip of Klaus Schwab, who is discussing a transition that we're all, I guess, in, whether we like it or not, because that's just who he is. Now, we're going to go in and go through all of that in the first segment. In the second segment, we've got a little bit of legal heavy lifting to do, which is always fun. And so I wanted to share this story. Of course, we've got the FBI that we've had a lot of criticisms about here on this channel. They apparently had agents embedded with, the Oath Keepers. Yeah, we've already talked about that. But now the Proud Boys too? The New York Times is reporting this, kind of a big shock. 8 allegedly FBI informants. The Proud Boys lawyers, they submitted beautiful motions to dismiss that are just a lot of fun to read through. They're saying that there were Brady violations. The government was not giving over exculpatory information that might prove their innocence. And that's a no-no. So you have to then file a motion to dismiss. The Proud Boys defense lawyers did that. The government responded under seal, so we can't see it. And then the defense lawyers layered on another response on top of it. And it's pretty fun. They're just blasting these prosecutors. So it's very enjoyable for us. We'll get there. And then in our last segment, there was another story. We've been following this big tech lawsuit for some time. Missouri and a bunch of states are suing the Biden administration. They wanted depositions from Fauci and Psaki and Vivian Murthy and all these other individuals in the Biden administration. Well, they also wanted to talk about or talk to an FBI special agent, somebody named Elvis Chen. You see him here, an FBI special agent who apparently was communicating back and forth with Meta, Facebook, about the Hunter Biden laptop story. The government prosecutors did not want this guy to be deposed, and they filed special motions to say, hey, judge, please, you want to talk about these other people? We'll sort of not fight them. This one was a big fight, and the government lost it. So we'll go through their final argument, their final reply. Please don't depose him before we take a look at the judge's final ruling. And so as you can see, my friends, We have a lot to get to. And if you want to be a part of the show and join in on the amazing community chat that we have chatting away over there, shout out to Bonnie. We've got Paul. We've got Sesparza's in the house. Shout outs to Paul Minot, C. Reed, Resident Bedoin, and a bunch of lurkers over there lurking away. I see you, Rippers Fun. I see you, Tell It Straight. I see you, Miss Lucky. All at our watchingthewatchers.locals.com community. A lot of fun over there. And so come check us out. All right. So now we have to cue this puppy up so that we can talk about it, hopefully before we all get obliterated by nuclear Armageddon. A Russian missile attack. That's the headline that you're probably seeing spread around all over the news. But the news is telling us one story, and we are looking to, I don't know, the Pentagon, the authorities, the intelligence apparatus that exists in the United States to give us some clarity on exactly what's going on here. Because if the Russians attacked Poland, which is a NATO ally, right? They're sort of under the umbrella of protection of the United States. That's a pretty big deal. That kind of changes the whole equation, doesn't it? And we are here today with the skeptical hat on, as always. So whatever hat you're wearing, take it off, put on your skeptical hat. As usual, we always like to sort of question and start with a blank slate and say that everybody who is reporting on this is probably either in the dark, they don't know exactly what is going on, or they're intentionally malicious. They've got other things that they want to create, stories they want to shove down our gullets. And they've already done this before several times, okay? We have seen this movie. We talked about the Nord Stream pipeline explosion. Wonder how that happened. Oh, investigation. And they're going to get to the bottom of it. And Anthony Blinken and a Secretary of State for the United States government, they're going to investigate and tell us what happened. Never got the answers on that one. Similar thing happened with the Crimean bridge explosion. Oh, that's weird. A truck or something drives across the bridge. It blows up. And very conveniently, hard to sort of parse out who's responsible for what. And so nobody knows really what the heck is going on. Everybody understands that there are probably all sorts of nefarious actors with ulterior motives in this issue. And so we got to put our skeptical hat on. Now, all that being said, let's take a look at some of the stuff that has been surfacing on Twitter. This individual shared this video came from an individual saying that this could possibly be the explosion that took place in Poland. We're watching this, keeping an eye on the size of the crater. Looks like a tractor, looks like some sort of conveyance. And the video is going to walk us right up to the crater, evidently, that came from a Russian missile, allegedly. And that looks like it's pretty deep in there. Pretty big explosion. If that is, in fact, in Poland, if that is, in fact, a Russian missile, if that is, in fact, some sort of artillery or something that is a NATO, piece of equipment, yeah, that could be pretty problematic. And so a lot of people have a lot of questions about what exactly that is and what is happening here. So as usual, Americans turn to the news to get our bearings straight on sort of what's happening. And as is the case, Fox News was reporting breaking news. They said that a Russian missile evidently crossed the border and landed in Poland, killing 2 individuals.
Reporting on from Russia a short time ago. Per the AP, a senior U.S. intelligence official now says that those Russian missiles have crossed into NATO member Poland and killed 2 people.
Wow.
A Polish government spokesman did not immediately confirm this information, but said top leaders were holding an emergency meeting due to a, quote, crisis situation. So
that's pretty clear details. Senior U.S. official, emergency meetings, everybody's coming together. We've got some pretty interesting details. In fact, 2 people dead, and it's all sort of coming in to Fox News through the AP in real time.
Just in, we're trying to independently confirm this information, but that Russian missiles have crossed into Poland, killing 2 people.
Wow.
John, obviously, will work to get more information on.
Everybody is going, what? That's interesting. Okay, this could be a big problem because as we've heard a lot from American politicians and NATO politicians and everybody around the world, if there is 1 inch, 1 incursion, 1 little hair that crosses the border into NATO allied territory, all bets are off. It's it. It's World War III. We're going to go and defend every single inch of stinking NATO territory, regardless of what the consequences may be, right? That's the red line. That's the hard line in the sand. And so now Uh-oh, doesn't sound good. Now, Fox News told us that this was a report that they, sort of were getting from the AP. We're going to check in with the AP. But first, let's see what CNN had to say about this, because there are questions about what the Polish are reporting, right? If you're in Poland and you got attacked, maybe you have some details that we don't know. CNN reports that Polish authorities confirmed that there were missiles that came in and killed some civilians or citizens in Poland. And of course, this is setting alarm bells off across the world.
We've had confirmation from Polish authorities of a very, very dramatic and potentially inflammatory moment in history, really, which is that two projectiles of some kind, rockets, missiles, we don't know exactly what. We also critically don't know who fired them, but we do know
if it's
that they
Russians
landed in Polish territory, very close to the border with Ukraine, in farmland, hitting a grain store and reportedly killing two Polish citizens or residents. Now, this is a very dramatic potential escalation, obviously, because Poland is a NATO country.
So not NATO equipment, farmland territory, evidently some grain, but it's still Polish citizens and it's Polish farmers. I mean, they're out there. They're just trying to support the food supply that we all need. And they are having a difficult time, of course, because they're getting exploded by missiles. Now, he says we don't really know if they're missiles, rockets, or who they came from or where they came from, but we do know it's in a very, very interesting spot right across the border, right into Polish territory.
There were ongoing cruise missile attacks being carried out in the west of Ukraine, close to Poland's border, at the time that these projectiles landed on Polish territory.
Now you can see the region here. You see Poland is sort of where my cursor is circling right here. And a lot of the conflict area is where you see the conflict area highlighted in yellow and in red.
It is conceivable that they are Russian missiles. It's equally conceivable at this stage that they could be the spent rockets of anti-aircraft missiles fired by Ukrainians, although that is somewhat less.
Oh, CNN is saying it could have been fired by Ukrainians. What? Let's rewind that.
It's equally conceivable at this stage that they could be the spent rockets of anti-aircraft missiles fired by Ukrainians, although that is somewhat less likely on a technical level. But this has automatically, effectively triggered a meeting of the equivalent of the National Security Council inside the Polish government, who are meeting now to decide how to react and what to say to this dramatic moment. There is, in the worst case scenario, from many people's perspective, a chance that the Poles might be inclined to apply to NATO for the all for one and one for all type support on a military level in this, in terms of.
So in other words, escalating this and sort of really pushing this towards more conflict rather than trying to decipher what has actually happened here. Was this an intentional act? Did they try to blow up something in Poland, or is this an errant missile? Did a missile malfunction? Something from the Russians that was supposed to land in Ukraine didn't land in Ukraine? Is this something that the Ukrainians shot off and it went across the border? Who knows? But everybody is bracing for impact because of the regional predisposition for explosion.
Wanting to go for retaliation. I think that's extremely unlikely, but this is and will be seen as a very dramatic escalation, a spreading of the war outside of the borders of Russia and Ukraine.
So we don't know exactly what happened or how it happened or where it came from or who's responsible for what, or whether the Russians did it or the Ukrainians did it, but it's not good, right? It seems like things are sort of expanding beyond the region. And that, of course, is a big problem for those of us who'd like to see de-escalations occur. So the AP is reporting that Russian missiles cross into Poland during a strike. This is updated just 8 minutes ago, written by John Leicester and James Laporta. You see here, Russia pounded Ukraine's energy facilities on Tuesday, biggest barrage of missiles yet, striking targets across the country, causing widespread blackouts. A senior U.S. intelligence official said missiles crossed into NATO member Poland and killed 2 people. A second person with the AP, said that apparent Russian missiles struck a site in Poland about 15 miles from the Ukrainian border. If confirmed, the NATO strike would mark the first time in the war that Russian weapons have come down in NATO territory. Now, the Russians responded. They denied at the Russian Defense Ministry. They said any strikes on targets near Ukrainian-Polish border, we're not behind them. And that looking at photos, they said, we have nothing to do with any of that. And those are not Russian weapons. A NATO official speaking on condition of anonymity said the alliance was looking into reports of a strike on Poland. The U.S. National Security Council said it was also checking into those reports. Polish government spokesman, somebody named Peter Mueller, confirmed that an explosion had killed 2 people and said some military units were put on alert while they investigated. Polish media is reporting the strike took place in an area where grain was drying, a village near Ukraine. The barrage also affected Moldova, very close nearby city. The missile strikes plunged much of Ukraine into darkness. They said we're going to survive everything. And of course, Zelensky was out speaking to his people. Now you can see this is what the region looks like, and the fighting just persists. Putin has not commented on the Russian retreat from Kherson and others. And of course, you know, this is all breaking news, and we are still waiting to hear more about this. Now, in a minute, we're going to check in with the Pentagon because the media is reporting one thing, Fox News is reporting another thing. And they're all sort of, you know, putting this together as it comes in. But we have an entire Department of Defense in this country that should be really capable of giving us some good answers. We'll check in with the Pentagon spokesman in a minute. But first, we've got to talk about, I mean, if we're on the brink of a nuclear annihilation, we have to talk about 4 Patriots. You know, a food shortage could be coming any minute. Even in the United States, we have drought, inflation, thermonuclear global war, policies that are pushing America and our food supply to the brink. That's why survival food is now more important than ever. And you can create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food ever. This is not ordinary food. Okay, we're talking about good for 25 years, super survival food, hand-packed right here in a family-owned facility in the United States, supporting 200 Americans. And when you order your supply, they come in compact, sturdy, water-resistant containers that stack easily. They've got different delicious breakfast, lunches, and dinners. All you can do is make these in about 20 minutes, boil water, simmer, and serve it. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com. Use code Robert, get 10% off your first purchase on anything in the store, including a 3-month survival kit, which we all know is very useful to have on hand. You get a famous guarantee a year after your order, free shipping on anything $97 or more. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every order is donated to charities that support our veterans and their families. And so you can go to 4patriots.com, use code Robert, and get 10% off your order. It's 4patriots.com, code Robert. Thank you, everybody, for supporting our awesome sponsors. And so now we know the media has been very sort of on the top of this. They have reported a lot of details. Americans turn over to the Pentagon to see what the real story is. We've got a bunch of government officials who spend a lot of American dollars on a lot of military intelligence, so we'd expect to see some answers from the Pentagon. This is Pentagon spokesperson who is explaining that they really don't have much information to share with any of us.
So as I mentioned, right now, we are aware of the press reporting on this. We have no information at this time to corroborate those reports, but again, are taking them seriously and looking into them. And so I will make sure that we provide you with any updates as soon as we have them.
As soon as we have the updates, we'll let you know. The Pentagon brought together this emergency briefing. Of course, we don't see much of this guy, and he is now detailing exactly what's going on. First question from the media is, can you explain what happened with this Russian missile attack? But he didn't have anything to offer. But the media wasn't going to let that stand. They had a lot of additional questions. And you can see we've got several clips of him because they tried again and again. Here's the second time. Another person in the media says, okay, Mr. Pentagon spokesman, you are working at the DOD. You've got a lot of information. You should have answers for us. The only reason we're here, the only thing on anybody's mind is what happened with this Russian missile. Can you please tell us, sir?
Everybody is reporting based in reference to the U.S. intelligence. So U.S. intelligence has already disseminated the information that actually those missiles.
Is that a statement of fact, or are you asking a question?
No, I'm asking. I'm saying that isn't it interesting that the U.S. intelligence has and the U.S. military doesn't have?
Well, and I'm telling you as the Pentagon press secretary that I have no information to corroborate that and that we're looking into it. So we'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
So we can get more information. Let me go.
Yeah, so cram it, media jerkhead. Why are you even asking me these questions here? Don't you know who I am? I work in the Pentagon. And so the poor reporter, he's like, well, excuse me, sir. I know you say you don't have any information about what's going on here, but we got corroborating reports that confirm there's some weird stuff going on, and it's weird that they've got it and you don't have it. So what gives? And this spokesman's like, who do you think you're talking to, son? I gave you an answer, and you better take it and love it.
Or are you asking a question?
No, I'm asking. I'm saying that isn't it interesting that the U.S. intelligence has and the U.S. military doesn't have?
Yeah.
Well, and I'm telling you as the Pentagon press secretary that I have no information to corroborate that and that we're looking into it. So we'll just leave it there.
Yeah,
until we can get more information. Let me go.
Leave it there. Next question. Don't ask another question, idiot. Okay. So that's very nice customer service there from our Pentagon. Just having, the guy's just asking some questions here. All right. But he didn't like it. So the media wants to try again. For the third time, the media says, hey, sir, you work at the Pentagon. The Pentagon is supposed to have information about what's going on between Russia, Poland, NATO, nuclear annihilation across the whole planet. Can you please give us some details?
Hi. So I know that you don't want to talk in hypotheticals, but the possibility.
She's a little nervous. Okay, she just watched that other guy get blasted. She just saw him say to him, "Shut your mouth. I'll let you know when there's more information." So this poor gal, she's like, "Okay, I'm going to try this again, but excuse me, sir. I know you really don't want to talk about this, so don't execute me or pull out your sidearm. But I'm going to ask you about the same thing."
Hi. So I know that you don't want to talk in hypotheticals, but the possibility of there having been either an errant or an intentional strike on NATO territory has been in the back of people's minds for a long time. Can you walk us through at least what steps the Pentagon goes through to try to verify whether or not, this is to try to verify the specifics of what's happening? Like, what is going on now?
What is going on?
As you try to get more clarity on whether you can or cannot corroborate that these strikes landed in Poland.
Why did you even come out here if you're just going to tell us you don't have any information? Third reporter, third time.
And also, is this going to change potentially the ask of what the United States makes at the contact group tomorrow at that meeting? Do you anticipate that this changes either the pressure on countries to pony up more military assistance or the rate at which that military assistance might need to come together?
Thanks, Karun. So as far as the contact group goes, I don't want to get ahead of the discussion or speculate, especially since we have no information at this point in time to corroborate the press reports regarding allegations of a Russian missile strike on Polish territory.
Now, why might they not want to corroborate Russian missile attacks? There have been some other conversations that the White House has been sort of walking back their never-ending, endless support for Ukraine. Blank checks, right? We heard from Milley. He's sort of reversing some course on that. They're trying to say, well, winter is coming and it doesn't look like things are going to settle anytime soon. So one reason that we had speculated that maybe, they blew up the Nord Stream pipeline would be that the Ukrainians or sort of the Western side doesn't want Europe to get a little bit squeamish. When winter really comes upon them, we don't want to hear a bunch of citizens complaining that they're freezing to death and demanding to turn on the gas from Russia again. Like, that's ridiculous. So why don't we just blow up the pipeline so that there is no opportunity to turn the gas back on because there's no pipeline again? Perfect. Same thing, right? Blow up these little infrastructure places, sort of escalate the tension so that people get boxed into certain positions so that there is no choice but to continue escalating. And we've heard from Zelensky, absolutely no rhyme or reason to any conversation about peace or settlement as long as Ukraine doesn't get everything that they want. So if there is, one contingent of the Biden administration that's saying, we really, really need to push for a resolution, the last thing that they might want is to come out and say the Russians bombed Poland, because that's only going to do the opposite. It's going to escalate the entire conflict. So the White House, right, the Pentagon might be very, very squeamish on this, and rightfully so. saying, hold on a minute, we don't want to go and just call this a Russian attack, because then what happens? Then we drag all of NATO back in. So while many people in the press are like, oh, Russia just attacked Poland, it's World War III, let's go. Other people, maybe, and maybe this gentleman, are saying, hey, hold on a minute, we're not confirming anything. Now, it could be because, it's true, or it could be because it's not true. We don't have any clue, which of course is why we always put our skeptical caps on.
In regards to your first question, anytime there's a situation, again, we have a variety of methods at our disposal in terms of verifying information, to include contacting allies and partners to gather information. And so, again, we're looking into these reports, and when we have more to provide, we'll be sure to do so.
When they've got more to provide, we don't have much details on really anything yet. Of course, it's all crashing in. And I'm not so sure that we're going to get much details anyways. I mean, truthfully, right? What happened with the Crimean bridge bombing? Do we have details on who exactly was behind that? No. Do we have any details on what happened with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline explosions? No. I mean, it's still under investigation, and I don't know if any flag has claimed responsibility for it. And they haven't given us confirmation one way or the other. But now that this is escalating, the standard line, of course, is being brought out to play. Pentagon spokesman is asked, hey, what if, though, the Russians did, in fact, attack Poland? No evidence of that, but what if they did, what would you do about this?
President Biden has said a few times that the U.S. will defend every inch of NATO territory. If these reports are true, what does that look like for the administration?
Yeah, thanks, Idris. So, as I mentioned, we're looking into these reports, don't have any information to corroborate them at this time. So I don't want to speculate or get into hypotheticals. When it comes to our security commitments and Article 5, we've been crystal clear that we will defend every inch of NATO territory.
Which could be called into action. Okay, if this is an attack on somebody who, on Poland, which is a NATO member, that is a big problem. And of course, he's saying we'll step in and we'll support them if it happens. So we'll watch what the Pentagon has developing for us. If they release anything more, don't know. Of course, the State Department is the other half of this. The Biden State Department is asked about the alleged Russian missile attack in Poland and whether they have anything to offer. Of course, they don't.
All right, so let's just start with the breaking news, right? Poland, these missiles, what do you know? I realize that Pentagon and the NSC have already said that you're looking for information. What can you tell us? Has the Secretary been involved in any calls? Anyone else?
So I don't have any calls from
Blinken.
the Secretary to read out, and would echo what
Ned,
our
where's
colleagues
Ned?
at the White House have said on this as well, which is that we have seen these reports out of Poland and are working with the Polish government and our NATO partners to gather more information. We can't confirm the reports or any of the details at this time. But I can assure you we will determine what happened and what appropriate next steps would be. But I don't have anything additional to offer at this point.
Okay, so they're going to give us more information. I'm very skeptical about it. Now, I am empathetic to the idea that this just happened and you need some time to sort of craft a response and all of that. But don't you think that all of these geniuses over there at the DOD, wouldn't they have sort of a game? Don't they game all of this out? Don't they have like strategies for all of this? And they sort of, okay, what happens if Russia does this? Well, if they do that, then we'll do this and all this stuff. And they feel sort of discombobulated. The media is like 3 steps ahead of them. The Polish are confirming this. Yeah, there were a couple people killed. Does look like it's Russians. And our, government is still trying to muster up a response. We don't really know if we'll get much from them. But elsewhere, we have the congressional Democrats in the Senate who are responding to this. Chuck Schumer is asked about the Russian missiles allegedly lobbed into Poland. He has no real comment on that because it's just breaking, but we are certain more money can go to Ukraine.
Do you expect the omnibus to include another Ukraine supplemental spending?
I would hope it does, and I'd hope we get bipartisan support.
More money,
One more.
Republicans
Yes.
should vote for it too.
Peter Schumer, the reports talking now that appears that Russian missiles crossed into NATO member Poland. Do you have any comments on that?
I can't give comments now because I don't know the details.
There you go. No details, but more money for Ukraine. Yes, I hope there's more of it, and I hope the Russians support it as well. So the endless war will continue, no doubt, and we'll see if we get any details about who's ultimately behind it. But Of course, until then, let's check and see what Biden is doing. Biden came back from the trip to Bali, Indonesia, and he was over there hobnobbing with some world leaders, and he was trying to, I guess, project American strength to the Chinese and do some other things. But it didn't really work out all that well because Biden missed dinner. Fox News' Ducey reports that he was supposed to attend a supper with a bunch of other G20 world leaders, but for some reason he had to turn in early, call it a lid.
Breaking news would be that President Biden is missing the G20 leaders' dinner. He is supposed to be at a supper right now, 8:10 in the evening here in Bali, Indonesia, with everybody that flew in. If you're the U.S. president, you spent basically 2 days flying to get here for a dinner like this. You got MBS there, you got Trudeau there. She is also there if anything was left on the table. Yesterday, we did hear President Biden tell us that he had a cold, and he has tested negative for COVID, despite the Cambodian leader from our last stop being positive now. But we do not know exactly what is going on with the president. They called an early lid. So we will keep you posted on what exactly is going on with.
It's okay, Peter. Nobody knows what's going on with the president. Not even the president. So we're all wondering what the heck happened over there. We also see this clip is spreading around on Twitter. It's gone viral. We see several different political figures who are walking, and apparently they're wearing some interesting outfits. People are criticizing Trudeau. People are criticizing Biden about this outfit. Some people calling it a MAO outfit or something like that. Now, I'm not a cultural connoisseur. I don't know. I'm not a sophisticated person in this arena. I'm just me. But I'm more concerned about how Biden's walking and how people are sort of watching where they're walking next to Biden. Here's what it looks like. All right, so we'll turn the volume down just a little bit. And you can see Biden and Trudeau are walking. And they're sort of keeping distance from him. Don't knock him over. Now, it's also an interesting outfit, of course, as you can see. And here it is again. Boy, looks a little unstable there on his feet. Yikes. Okay, so that is our elected class, our elite figures who are governing us hard and for our own good, who are congregating, taking pictures, and giving speeches too. Very strange. Watch it. Watch as he sort of turns this corner. Just watch his little. He's not that steady. What is that? I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's a little strange. I think it's a little strange. All right. Now we've been critical of Biden for a long time. It's amazing to me that he keeps going. But anyways, my friend, that clip is getting a lot of attention. This clip is also getting a lot of attention. While the fictional world leaders congregate and pretend like they're governing us, the real people behind the scenes who are actually making things happen, like Klaus Schwab, are plotting their transition for all of us, whether you like it or not, whether you voted for it or, in this case, didn't vote for it. A lot of people are planning for your future.
Of course, if you look at all the challenges, we can speak about a multi-crisis, an economic, a political, a social, an ecological, an institutional crisis. But actually,
who created those?
What we have to confront is a deep, systemic, and structural restructuring. Of our world.
Klaus Schwab is going to restructure our world.
And this will take some time.
Time.
And the world will look differently.
It's going to look different.
After we have gone through this transition process.
After we've gone through the transition process that none of us voted for, that Klaus Schwab and his goons at the World Economic Forum that control, as we've estimated here, potentially as much GDP power as China or even arguably the United States. Okay, the World Economic Forum is sort of this big club of all the mega corporations. You got to make a certain amount of money in order to be a part of it. And if you add all that money up, if you translated that to GDP, you could say that the World Economic Forum was analogous literally to China. We did the math here about a year ago on the show. And now he is speaking from Indonesia about this great transition that we're all going to be shoved through.
Politically, the driving forces for this political transformation, of course, is the transition into a multipolar world, which has a tendency to make our world much more fragmented. And for these reasons, events like this one, the G20, and so on, are the very important connectors to avoid a too great segmentation.
Saying that the world is going to go into greater division when the United States is less unipolar, okay, when the world is more multipolar. In other words, when the United States has less of a role to play on the global arena, right? Elevate China, elevate some of these other entities to create a multipolar world rather than a one-polar world. And a lot of people are talking about this, including people like Peter Zeihan and Balaji Srinivasan. They've all sort of had different varying theses that the United States is part of the geoeconomic sort of restructuring will pull back. And we'll see how that goes. But they are plotting and planning a giant transition for us, whether we like it or not. And we all have to wait and see if we can learn anything more about the Russian missile attack alleged on Poland. We don't know, but we will, of course, continue to follow the story. Thank you for joining us as we do. Thank you for hitting that like button and subscribing wherever it is you are watching this. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends, let's jump into our next segment here when we've got some legal business to attend to. You know, we had the international affairs segment. Now we're swapping back into some legal because we've got some bad FBI agents and we have a very fun motion to dismiss by some fun defense lawyers who are pissed. And we'll get into that. Agents embedded with the Proud Boys, special FBI informants, were there communicating with the FBI prior to the January 6 activity. And of course, the Proud Boys have been charged with seditious conspiracy, and they have been really under an inquisition from the Democratic Party and even from many Republicans for quite some time. And as this case and their seditious conspiracy charges continue to steamroll towards a trial, we get very interesting reporting from the New York Times. Major exclamation point, because what? The New York Times is reporting that the FBI had informants in Proud Boys, the seditious conspiracy group. How is that possible? I thought that the seditious conspirators at the Proud Boys almost wrecked America. If the FBI had informants, why didn't the FBI informants stop all of this from happening? Oh gosh, I don't know. Here, New York Times tells us FBI had informants in the Proud Boys. Court papers suggest in filings in the seditious conspiracy case against members of the far-right group, defense lawyers claimed that information favorable to their clients was improperly withheld. Now, we're going to take a look at all of these motions. These are motions to dismiss based on Brady violations, which you may have heard about here on this channel or in TV shows, movie shows, wherever, where the government hides evidence that might show somebody is innocent. Let's continue. The FBI had as many as 8 informants, 8 of them, inside the far-right Proud Boys in the months surrounding the storming of the Capitol. Recent court papers indicate the existence of the informants came to light over the past few days in a flurry of veiled court filings filed by defense lawyers for 5 members set to go to trial. In the papers, some of which were heavily redacted, and some of these are even filed under seal, so we can't even see them. The lawyers claim that some of the information the confidential sources had provided to the government was favorable to their efforts to defend their clients and that it was improperly withheld. The government held evidence from the defense. Now let's go through this, but I wanted to share with you, remember these names: Enrique Tarrio, the group's former leader, Joseph Biggs, Ethan Nordine, Zachary Real, and Dominic Pizzola. We're going to start with, this is the lawyer for Ethan Nordine is the individual who has submitted this motion, but huge portions of this case are under protective order, and so we can't really see everything. We're going to have to piece it together bit by bit. So let me explain how that's going to work. We're going to go through the Proud Boys motion to dismiss, right? They filed a big motion. It's a lot of fun. The government submitted a response to this. So they submitted a response, but this was filed under seal. Okay, so we can't actually see their response. So we're just going to have to skip over it. And we're going to look at the Proud Boys' reply to the response. Okay, so they move to dismiss the case. The government responds, and then we're going to read the Proud Boys' ultimate reply. And it's a lot of fun. These defense attorneys are great. But before we get there, my friends, let's check in with Goldco. Because my friends, you know, if you have a 401k or an IRA or a savings account, you know as well as I do that things are scary out there. The Biden administration has already printed more money in the past 2 years than the previous 100 years combined, and the national debt hit a record $30 trillion. Inflation is the highest we've seen since 1982, and it's only a matter of time until the house of cards comes crashing down. If you have a retirement savings account, your money could be at risk. And so talk to my friends at Goldco to see how you can protect your retirement with gold and silver before it's too late. Go to robertlikesgold.com. They'll give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open up a qualifying account. That's robertlikesgold.com. It's for U.S. individuals only. And thank you for supporting our sponsors at robertlikesgold.com. Okay, so we have the Proud Boys filing a motion to dismiss, and this is a lot of fun. Defense lawyers for Nordine, a Proud Boy, file a motion to join a motion to dismiss. They want the indictment gone, and they also want sanctions. You can see this is in the case of United States of America versus Ethan Nordine, taking place out of the District of Columbia. It's a 6-page filing, and it's a motion to dismiss. They also want sanctions. They want to punish the government for their misbehavior. Defense counsel writes, they say, Your Honor, we're joining a prior motion and I've got a lot more to say to it. They say previously, another motion was filed by this guy, Real. And there are Brady violations in connection with plea bargaining. Plea bargaining is making a deal. So in this case, the government is going to be using their big fat boot to press on the neck of the defendants. And they're going to say, take this plea deal or else. Let's see how that unfolds. As the public motion previously files indicate, the government, the prosecutors, they produced a trove of discovery material, which is the entire case file, comprising hundreds of pages of documents 1 month before trial. So the government prosecutors that have literally the entire case file, the defendants are just sitting around. They don't have access to anything other than what the government gives them. The government writes the reports, they get the camera footage, they do the interviews, they do everything. And if they keep everything, the defense is at a serious disadvantage. So in this case, 1 month before trial, these loser prosecutors came out and they produced a trove of discovery, hundreds of pages of documents. Significant portions of that production contain information, favorable to the Proud Boys. Shocking. Why did they keep it out of their possession for so long? And it also has material to the question of guilt or to punishment, okay? Meaning that this is Brady material. This information must be timely produced to the defendants. Otherwise, there are penalties for that. Failure to do it could result in dismissal of the charges, exclusion of government evidence, bar discipline, or any other remedy. Now, the reason we penalize this so heavily in the United States is because there's really no other way to punish the government. If the government does something bad in the middle of a criminal proceeding, what are you going to do? Fine them? Are you going to fine the prosecutor? Oh, Mr. Prosecutor, you did a very bad thing, and so now the government has to pay $100,000. They don't care. It's the government. It's not their money. What do they care about? Nothing. And the courts recognize this. Even the prosecutors are basically immune. What are you going to do? Fire a U.S. government prosecutor? Good luck. They're there for basically life if they want to be. So there's no recourse. You're going to call these people in front of Congress and say, oh, you did a bad thing. They're going to go, okay, great. Well, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. So the only real remedy is to dismiss the case. It's to dismiss the charges for serious Brady violations. That's what they're asking for here. Even as government, these prosecutors, has made dozens of public filings in the court alleging that the Proud Boys are guilty of 3 criminal conspiracies, the prosecutors shielded from the public's view exculpatory information that might show that they're innocent, by designating hundreds of pages of discovery material, quote, highly sensitive under the protective order, like that, right? The same saga we've seen this entire prosecution. Oh, it's too sensitive to send out. Sorry about that. Thus, the government is able to shape a public narrative, allow defendants, and simultaneously a narrative about the defendants, and then simultaneously prevent them from including favorable information in their own public filings. The government is playing shady. They're not giving over the information. Making matters worse, this defense attorney argues, the government has made the extraordinary argument that these exculpatory materials cannot be produced directly to the defense. In other words, the defense has to jump through a bunch of hoops in order to get information that they're rightfully due, which is exculpatory in the first place. The government prosecutors, they've argued successfully. In other words, this judge has already said this is the process. They said that the defense lawyers must comply with the following procedure if you want the information. Okay, so you know the information that might show your client is completely innocent? Yeah, that information? Yeah, I want that now. They say, okay, well, we'll give it to you, but only if you do the following. And they got permission from the judge that this is appropriate. They said that you have to do the following. Number one, you must travel to an FBI office to review the materials in person. Okay, and so, all right, some of this stuff you might see, like if you're dealing with, images of underage individuals or something like that, like you don't want to put that in an email, right, and send that across open, unsecured email to somebody. Hey, take a look at this discovery, right? So yeah, sometimes you go into prosecutors' offices or FBI offices and you take a look at the material. But this is not really one of those cases, is it? This is kind of not one of those types of cases that we just discussed. This is FBI informants and confidential human sources. And so this type of demand is a little bit interesting. Now, to stack on top of it, not only do they have to go to the FBI office, but counsel may not receive copies of the material, but they must take handwritten notes, okay? So they disclose hundreds of pages of documents. You saw that right here, hundreds of pages. And you have to go to the FBI office. And for example, like you can't walk out of there with pictures of something that's problematic, but hundreds of pages of documents, they don't even want you to take copies of those, just take notes. So what if you want, what if they're pretty detailed documents? You got to take notes. You also it says counsel must then, upon those handwritten notes, move the court to produce to the defendants based upon the summary of the note. So they got to go there, got to write the notes, then got to go back, draft a motion to the court, explain to the court, hi judge, we went and we followed the FBI's rules and we said that we need this stuff. Then they got to submit that motion to secure this evidence for trial. So before they can even go prepare for trial, they've got to go through this whole stinking thing and the court has to give them permission to get it. Amazing. That is your government who is giving defendants who, until you might say that the Proud Boys are guilty because you think that they're the worst thing in the world because Trump, whatever. That's fine. Under American law, they still are entitled to the presumption of innocence and to due process. That has not evaporated yet. And so in order to do their job and their attorneys to do their job and to present their case, they have to have access to the evidence. In this case, the FBI is making, the DOJ, in conjunction with the FBI, is making them jump through a bunch of hoops. They're dumping hundreds of pages of documents 30 days before trial, and much of that is exculpatory on its face. Wow. So the defense continues, they say, discovery restrictions such as these have only ever been applied in cases involving classified information and child crimes, exactly like we talked about. The justification provided by the government for these unprecedented discovery hurdles has rested on certain factual claims about the defense. Defense counsel moved under seal for a fact-finding hearing to establish the government's justification was demonstrably false. So they say, we, judge, have asked you for a hearing on this. The government is saying that we're engaged in all sorts of bad actions. We're asking for a fact-finding hearing to show you that they're false. But our motion has gone unanswered and unresolved for several months. These defense lawyers are saying, we'll come in and talk about it. Filed a motion, no response. So they continue. They say last year, Nordine, one of the Proud Boys, moved to unseal certain Brady materials designated highly sensitive by the government. Okay, he's going forward to a trial. He is an innocent defendant until proven guilty or until he accepts a plea deal. And so he wants to see materials that might show he's innocent. In opposition, the government said, no, you can't have that. They told the court that these materials were not even relevant to the case, much less Brady information. They said, oh, no, Judge, it's not even close. It's not even connected to the conspiracy or sedition or anything. It's just like, don't worry about it. Turns out there was Brady information in there. It was exculpatory. On November 7th, however, the government, because they rejected a plea, on November 7th, however, the government served a letter on the defendants, this is the Proud Boys, concerning its ongoing production of hundreds of pages of discovery a month before trial. They say, oh my gosh, suddenly, trial's around the corner. We want to use this material, and now we have to disclose it if we want to use it. In the letter, the government described the materials Nordine moved to unseal last year the following way. Okay, so Nordine said, I want all of that a long time ago. But when they released it just in November, all the documents on the cover sheet they sent over, they said, hey, this is everything we're sending you. They said, oh, by the way, in this big binder that we're sending you, the documents some of them are on their face exculpatory. Wow. And they're putting that in the government letter, page 1, emphasis added. Yeah, he emphasized that big time. Put that in italics because it deserves it. Prosecutors say, yikes, by the way, exculpatory information coming over your way just a short time before trial. You asked for the discovery previously, but you didn't get it. On October 21st, prior to the release of this new material, the government made a written plea offer to the defendants. Okay, take this plea deal or else you'll go to trial and lose. And if you go to trial and lose, we're going to penalize you much more severely because, of course, prosecutors impose what we like to call a trial tax, where they say, take this deal, we'll give you a good deal. But if you make us work, if you make us sit through a trial and call all my witnesses and bring in these officers and so on, we're going to ask for a much harsher penalty. So they did that in October before they released the exculpatory material. Can you imagine sitting there with your loved one, encouraging them to take a plea deal, saying this is the best you're going to get, by the way. And if you don't take this, the prosecutor has told you they're going to ask for 20 years. So just take this plea deal for 1 year. Somebody takes the plea deal, they go to prison. Guess what happens? You find out there's all this exculpatory material that may have exonerated them completely that your loser government hid from you. So that's what they tried to do. Now, that didn't happen in this case. Okay, they made a written plea offer to the defendants to try to shove them into a plea deal. The government advised that this offer would expire on October 27th. You like that? They gave him 6 days. 6 days to take the plea deal. The worst. I've dealt with many of these prosecutors, the worst. And so, okay, 10/21, they send another letter on 10/27. You've got 6 days to think about this plea deal. And if you don't accept it, it's going to expire and it's going to get worse. And we haven't even given you any of the exculpatory material in the first place. Shocking. Now, in addition to the Brady violations described in another Proud Boy motion, the government has likely committed multiple Brady violations in connection with plea bargaining. Almost certainly these violations have affected the due process rights of every defendant in this matter and in related cases. As multiple court of appeals have held, a due process violation occurs, quote, if prosecutors or other government actors have knowledge of a defendant's factual innocence, but fail to disclose the information before he enters a guilty plea. It's hiding the cards before you shove somebody into a plea deal. They give us a bunch of case law that supports this. U.S. Supreme Court here, 10th Circuit over here, 9th Circuit right there, 9th Circuit 1995, 6th Circuit over here, and the 8th from 1988. Defense lawyers continue. With respect to Nordine, Biggs, Tario, and Pizzola, the government attempted to secure guilty pleas by October 27th before producing a trove of discovery material, including Brady information, exoneration material, on November 3rd. Did you see that? These pieces of garbage, man. With respect to other defendants in this case and related ones, Charles Donahue and Jerry Pertino, counsel does not have specific knowledge as to whether the government made their material available to them before they took guilty pleas. Okay, so this exact situation that I was describing with you and your loved one, encouraging to take a plea deal or something, that happened with other Proud Boys. Charles Donahoe, Jeremy Bertino, don't know what happened with them. They got their own lawyers. But they entered guilty pleas. I wonder if any of that exculpatory material would have exonerated them. But they got freaked out, man. And they probably had their lawyers sitting there saying, yo, Charles, yo, Jeremy, guys, this is the DOJ. This is like January 6th stuff. They're out of their freaking minds. Jacob Chansley got like, what, 3 years or something. So take this plea deal. They're going, okay, what is it? Six months? I guess I'll take it. But if the government did not give them that exculpatory information, they're saying those guilty pleas were not knowing. They were not voluntary, and thus they are invalid under the due process clause. So this hero defense attorney is doing the work, or doing some great work for some other defendants. He's saying, Judge, how could they have possibly taken a plea deal that was knowingly, voluntarily accepted without any undue influence from anybody else if the government was hiding material from them in the first place? They say that all of that has to be addressed. They say when Nordine's counsel learned that the government would make a discovery production on November 3rd, several months after discovery and that whole procedure was already over, counsel inquired as to whether the government got permission from the court. Okay, so this defense lawyer is saying, what? Defense lawyer sitting in his office, government prosecutor sends him an email. Hey, defense lawyer, just a notice, we're sending over more discovery. Defense lawyer is sitting there going, what are you people nuts? Discovery's over. You already told me, you gave me everything. We made all of our requests. You said it was all highly sensitive and we didn't need it anyways. So then when you sent it over, defense lawyer says, well, why are you sending me more? Did you get permission from the judge? Did you go ask him for this? And the defense lawyer says no. He says no. His good faith basis for believing that such an application could have been made is that, at least on the face of things, the government has no justification for producing this favorable information that it's been in possession for over a year, and just now has the ability to disclose it within a month before trial. Counsel repeated this question to the government several times. In other words, are you effing kidding me? Is probably what he said multiple times. Nordine's counsel repeated this question to the government several times. Probably something, let me translate that for you. Are you effing kidding me, bro? Are you serious? That's what he said to him. Are you serious right now? And yeah, that's appropriate. That's an appropriate response. The government has refused to answer. Now, if the government made an ex parte application or filing in connection with the highly sensitive materials in this case, the defense must be notified of that fact with a docket entry, if any. Nordine has made clear that the defense does not seek any written statement providing good cause for the production delay. Rather, the defense must be apprised of the basic unsensitive fact that an ex parte application means that the prosecutor was sort of asking the judge for permission to do this outside of the regular bounds. Nordine now moves the court to direct the government to let us know if that happened, because the government's not telling us if that happened or not. So, Judge, I'm asking you to let us know. Did he come to you and ask permission for it? Because I asked him several times, are you stinking serious? And he's not answering. Transcripts from interviews is a separate section here. The defense lawyer for the Proud Boys continues. He says, the court will recall that one of the primary reasons put forward by the government to postpone the trial date was to ensure the production of the defendants of transcripts from the fake illegally constituted January 6th Select Committee. Right? Everybody's asking for continuances on these trials. It was scheduled in August. It hasn't happened yet. It got bumped out. Why? Well, they wanted transcripts from the House Select Committee because they were continuing their garbage inquisition and a lot of new materials popping out. And so you say, well, gosh, what if somebody says something in one of those hearings that might prove our client is innocent? What if somebody else comes out and says, no, it wasn't the Proud Boys, it was the Oath Keepers, or the Oath Keepers say it was whatever. They're saying the investigation is still ongoing, so we might as well, sort of continue this out. And what would be very helpful as this defense continues forward is if we got transcripts of what they all talked about. But that hasn't happened. One relevant cooperating witness, Bertino, who took a plea deal, was interviewed by the committee. He will also likely be a government witness at trial, but to date, the government has not answered our questions about when the transcripts will be produced. So not only do they keep the exculpatory material, they also are not producing the transcripts. So this hero attorney named David Smith out of Alexandria, Virginia, and Nicholas Smith, Don't know if they're related, but shout out to the Smith family law firm. They continue. They say if the Brady rules, the DPPA court orders and local criminal rules are not enforced in this case through sanctions, the Proud Boys' due process rights become a dead letter. There's no basis for them at all. Particularly as the defendants did not conspire to commit crimes inside or outside the Capitol, and the government has shown no evidence to the contrary, the indictment should be dismissed or significant alternative sanctions should be imposed. Given that any delay in trial could mean over 2.5 years of pretrial incarceration of presumptively innocent people, a simple trial continuance is not a sanction. Saying these guys have already been in custody for years, and you are now denying them of their legal due process and equal protection rights. Outstanding. Now that's just getting started, because as you can see, the government response was filed under seal. Now this is a screenshot from the online docket, and we'll notice that these numbers, these docket entry numbers, these are docket entry numbers. So 535, 539, 541. There's missing numbers. Where's 540? Where's 536? Where's 537? Where's 538? Oh no, we can't see them. Those numbers are filed under seal. Those are the government filings. And so the government responded to that motion to dismiss. They filed it under seal. We can't even see what's in it. What did they respond? Did they deny all of this? Did they say, no, it's great evidence, and we filed it late because we're honest and we didn't mean? No idea what they said. But we do have the defense's reply. So remember how this works. The defense filed the original motion, so they get the final word. They move first. The government files a response. The defense replies to the response. And that's what this looks like here. Defense lawyers file a 9-page response in the DC Circuit Court, responding to the government's reply. They say, under seal, the government acknowledges that 1 month before trial, meaning these prosecutors, they said, yeah, we kind of did this. 1 month before trial and months after the close of discovery and nearly 2 years after Nordine's arrest, they admit that they produced hundreds of pages of, quote, sensitive records that are material to the defense. We need this stuff. It's not ancillary. Many of them have been in the possession of the U.S. Attorney's Office for a year or longer. They were sitting there in a file cabinet somewhere. Some conflict with what the government has been representing in court since February 2021. Some conflict with what the government has been representing. Okay, the government, in other words, has not been honest. Owing to unusual restrictions that the government has placed on the defense's review of the material, those 4 things they had to do, show up and do, the limbo dance, it may prove impossible for the defendants to review the documents, interview relevant witnesses, perhaps 8 of them or more. Do you see that there? The relevant witnesses, perhaps 8 of them or more. Who could those witnesses be? Are those FBI informants? And secure the evidence before trial on December 12th. Though it is 21 pages, which we can't see, filed under seal, the sealed opposition omits that the government has opposed Nordine's effort to hold a fact-finding hearing to determine the risk of these restrictions. It also omits that in the Oath Keepers case, which is a different case, we're talking about the Proud Boys, the government itself proposed a hearing. So why is the government in that case proposing a hearing about getting to the bottom of the facts when in this case they're not trying to do that? That is, the government would have the court ignore that before making its last-minute discovery production in violation of the orders, the government conveniently persuaded the court to hobble the defense's ability to review those materials and induced the defense and prevented them from disproving the claims. The sealed opposition that we can't see continues to insinuate that anomalous discovery restrictions are warranted on account of factual assertions the government seeks to avoid having to substantiate. That's understandable, they say. It is considerably less easy to make false claims appear true in open court than in sealed, non-public filings not subject to fact-finding hearings. Ooh, that is juicy. Let's read that again. Love this. Okay. The sealed opposition from these loser prosecutors who want to argue about all of this in the dark of night. The sealed opposition continues to insinuate that anomalous discovery is warranted. We need restrictions because we don't want to substantiate why these restrictions should be in place under normal procedures. Defense says, yeah, we understand that. It's very much less easy to make false claims appear true in open court. It's much harder to lie when we can all see it. No wonder you want sealed filings and you don't want fact-finding hearings because you're a bunch of liars, is what he's saying without saying it. Woo! Hence the last-minute discovery drops, the government's latest effort to delay the case's trial date as presumptively innocent defendants continue to remain incarcerated for almost 2 years, while the government hides exonerative evidence. The government fails to address Nordine's motion to direct the government to identify any ex parte applications, right? The defense lawyer is saying, excuse me, government, did you get permission from the judge to leak out all of this Brady information very late? Yes or no? They don't want to answer that. They're asking the judge to answer it for them. They say the Brady violations that have occurred will continue to occur until the government is held accountable to the rules. Now, we got some more information about the backdrop here and about this exculpatory material that was ultimately released. And we read through most of that. They talk about the government asking for a continuation, saying that they need all parties to prepare for trial and so on. The government's sealed opposition gives no hint of what Brady information now in its possession will drop just before trial in August 2023, should the government prove successful in its case. So the lawyers continue. We've got some argument here. They say, the government does not spend much time in its opposition arguing that its November 3rd of production does not constitute Brady. That may be because whether the government characterizes discovery as Brady has been shown to depend on what it needs from the court at any given moment. Wow. They say at time 1, sensitive information is not relevant, but at time 2, it's exculpatory. So they're just calling out these prosecutors saying, the judge, they just keep changing their stories to you. Early in the case, not relevant. Now it's exculpatory. Instead, the government focuses on the argument that it was not suppressing any information. They say, oh no, judge, it doesn't matter that we delayed this stuff for years or that we just dropped it 30 days before trial. They say it doesn't harm the defendant. This is the same thing they say most of the time. Well, it didn't actually harm them, so who cares? The government quotes somebody named Judge Bates. They say, in this circuit, the government must disclose material in sufficient time for the defendant to use it in her case. And they say, well, it's 30 days out. They've got plenty of time. So there's no problem here. Defense says, it is far from clear why the government believes it can credibly claim that its November 3rd production comes close to satisfying that standard. It's not just that the government has produced hundreds of pages of records, which have been in the government's possession for a year or longer, 1 month before trial. They're probably, we could probably get through all of that. Nor is it just that this production comes at the top of the largest discovery universe in any criminal case in DOJ history. Okay. It's going to be $100 million by the time it's all said and done, investigating this. And they've got tens of thousands of hours and probably hundreds of thousands of pages of material that's not been disclosed. The biggest investigation ever. They've brought the entire country to a screeching halt, telling us we're all going to die unless this is rectified. The government's Brady violations lie in the facts that the defense must not just review in a month of records what the government could have produced a year ago. The government has positively interfered with an already complex process. So they're sort of giving a list of why the government has really mangled this whole thing. They created a complex process. They imposed restrictions on the defense, making it virtually impossible to get the material before trial. Got to show up, file a motion, submit, a permission slip, go talk to Jill Sanborn, formerly at the FBI, and so on. Ridiculous. Not only are the factual justifications offered by the government for the discovery false, for the restrictions false, but the government has urged the court to reject the defense's attempts to hold a fact-finding hearing. They don't even want to argue about this stuff. The government created an untimely production. It violates discovery production deadlines. They have rules that they should follow before producing this stuff. And there is a serious lack of good faith about what the government is doing. The government does not respond to questions from the defense about the materials, like why are they redacted, even when made available at government offices. It represents to the court. The prosecutors tell the court that it would be grossly inappropriate for the court to hold simple fact-finding hearings as to the necessity of these discovery restrictions. And then it takes exactly the opposite position in front of another judge in the same court. It says that the court has sensitive materials that are not relevant. Then changes, and now they're exculpatory, saying this hinders the defense. We can't investigate anything. They're also giving misspelled names and fax numbers rather than phone numbers. They're providing the defense with incorrect information as well. This indictment, says David Smith and Nicholas Smith, should be dismissed, or government witnesses should be precluded from testifying at trial. Man, this defense attorney is angry, and rightfully so. To continue the trial without more is not a sanction, but it's a reward to the government. Don't allow them to drop off hundreds of pages of documents at the last minute right before trial and then turn around, and when they say, oh, we need more time to continue our case, don't give it to them. Instead, just dismiss the indictment, because these people are rotten liars who have been trying to hide the ball, who have been trying to put undue pressure on defendants to take plea deals when they're sitting on information that might be exculpatory. This defense attorney is very upset about it, and rightfully so. And it's pretty disgusting what is going on. But that's what happens, every day in this country, unfortunately. And so shout out to defense attorneys out there who are blasting these prosecutors, because we all should know about the FBI agents and them being embedded in all of these different entities. They were embedded with the Proud Boys. They were embedded with the Oath Keepers. We've got no answers about Ray Epps or any of those other activities. And what about all of the other FBI agents and every other police agency that was investigating and supposedly protecting the Capitol? If they were embedded with all of these groups, why did it happen? Why? Maybe it's because it is what they wanted to happen. All right, my friends. And so we will continue to cover that. But we've got one final segment, and we're actually sticking with a little bit of the FBI. But this is about big tech. And you can see this FBI agent is here. And we've got our motions lined up. And so I think we are ready to rock and roll. Missouri and the states win against the Biden administration, securing a victory to depose an FBI special agent. Missouri's Eric Schmitt is the person who has been leading the charge on this, and he posted on Twitter the following. He says, breaking, in our lawsuit against the Biden administration for colluding with social media companies. A lot of this was about Hunter Biden and the laptop, of course. All of it got censored and buried right in the months leading up to the election. A lot of people have problems with that. But Eric Schmitt has been suing the Bidens, wanting depositions from Fauci and Psaki and Murthy and others who are in the Biden White House colluding with the tech companies. He says, big news, the deposition of an FBI official is going to move forward after our big win in court. Let's take a look at who this person is. FBI Special Agent Elvis Chen is going to be the individual who is going to be deposed unless something changes. A little bit more about him. He is an assistant special agent in charge, FBI San Francisco Cyber Branch. You can see the details here. He manages the field office's cyber branch responsible for cyber investigations, digital forensics, technical operations, community engagement, public affairs, 18 years in the Bureau. He is been involved in a bunch of stuff, engineer, semiconductors, and all sorts of chemical engineering, went to Naval Postgraduate School, Homeland Security Studies, University of Washington, bachelor's degree, chemical engineering, and so on. Okay, this is the guy that they are talking about, and I was able to find a little bit about him. This is FBI Special Agent Chen, who is going to be deposed by Eric Schmitt, Missouri Attorney General, giving us some details about who he is and what he does.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elvis Chen. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Cyber Branch here at FBI San Francisco. I manage 9 squads that are responsible for the cyber investigations in this office, the digital forensics, technical operations, private sector engagement, public community outreach, as well as public affairs.
What's the
I
most
think that
important
the most
skill?
important skill that people working in cybersecurity need today is adaptability. You're not always going to know what's going to happen. You're not even going to realize that you've been in a security incident until well after the fact. So I think having a cool head, being flexible, and being able to take things as they come is the most important skill that you
That's good advice. Yeah, that's good advice.
I would
What's this
say
one?
that the most advanced social engineering attack I've seen, or the most sophisticated, is probably from the Twitter hack. It's been a year and a half now. So what they did is vishing, which is a combination of sending spearfish emails to the employees, but then following up with phone calls to convince them of who they were supposed to be. In this case, they were supposed to be fellow Twitter employees. So vishing has been a big deal.
Phishing. Don't give your passwords out. Okay, so that's the FBI special agent who is the subject of a deposition. Now, he works in San Francisco. He's this engineering, cybersecurity person. We just heard him talk about Twitter. Oh, the Twitter hack, right? Oh, they just got hacked by all this stuff. So he obviously is somebody who interfaces a lot with these big tech companies. He's right there in, right outside of Silicon Valley, and he is working hard on these issues. Now, Missouri filed a lawsuit against the Biden administration, and there has been a lot of activity on this case because the judge has ruled that many people in the administration have to sit for depositions. Now, the government really does not want that to happen at all. We're going to take a look at the government's reply before we take a look at the judge's final ruling, which is ordering the deposition of Elvis Chen. And this is an interesting ruling from an interesting judge. Now, the way that this works, we're going to fast forward through a lot of the sort of back-end legal stuff. The original motion for a deposition is filed by the plaintiffs, the people who sue. In this case, it's Missouri. And the government was filing a response, or actually they filed a motion to stop him from having to testify, everybody. And they submitted a second request to sort of renew that. And then there was a response from Eric Schmitt, and then there's a reply. Okay, so you get the original filing, a response, and then a reply. We're going to skip the first two. We're just going to jump into the reply. We're going to give the government the last word before we take a look at the ruling, right? This is the final argument from the government before the judge ultimately rules. Government prosecutors submit how big is this thing? Let's see how big this is. I can't see it. Oh, government prosecutors submit a 6-page filing. This out of the Western District of Louisiana, state of Missouri versus Joe Biden. Prosecutors are replying in support of the defendant's motion for reconsideration. They're saying, Judge, look, I know you already said that this guy, Elvis Chen, he needs to be deposed. Okay, we know you already ruled on that. We're asking you to reconsider. Okay, please, really please. We really do not want this guy to testify, okay? Don't let him testify. So they say, Judge, okay, let's catch you up. Judge, in the deposition order, which you said he needs to testify at, this court grounded authorization of the deposition on Elvis Chen based on statements that he allegedly made to Meta, okay, so Facebook, saying that the states are arguing that the FBI agent Chan's communications with Meta are fact, and they're saying, Judge, that's really the only reason you're allowing this deposition to take place. You're taking their word for it. We're asking you not to do that. They say, the recent letter from Meta's counsel clarifies that the states here, Missouri, the description of the relationship between those communications and, quote, the Hunter Biden laptop story was mistaken. Oh, so the states are saying, Judge, you should allow us to communicate with Elvis Chen. Why? Because our evidence shows that he had a close relationship with Meta. Government, these aren't prosecutors, but these are government civil rights defense attorneys, essentially. The government are responding saying that there is no need to interview Elvis Chen because Meta, their lawyers, told us that the relationship between their lawyers and Chen was different. The states say Chen and Facebook were colluding. Facebook is saying, no, we weren't. So the government is saying, in this situation, don't depose him because the plaintiffs are totally wrong. Don't listen to them. In opposing reconsideration, right, because the states want this deposition to happen, the states recite at length the events predating Meta's letter, which are unavailing, they say. But the key question here is what is known now, not what plaintiffs understood Meta to be saying before the letter. So they're saying, well, Meta may have said something previously, but they're saying this now, and so we should give them benefit now. They say the states additionally offer other new justifications to depose the FBI agent, which are founded on incomplete and incorrect accounts of 2 interviews of Mr. Chen. They also improperly attempt to lower the bar that they must clear by treating the deposition as part of ordinary discovery rather than extraordinary, saying that they're mistaken, there is no connection between Mr. Chen, and they should not depose him. Now, quickly, we can go through some of these arguments. They say that Mr. Chen, according to Meta, they sent a letter on October 25th. They said, at no point in time did Chen advise Meta, quote, to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story, nor did any of his colleagues. Okay, that's the letter. Oh, no, Mr. Chen didn't tell us to do anything. Ooh. That statement is new evidence not previously available to the court. Its clear import now is that the record does not support the state's argument that he was colluding with Facebook. So, in other words, Facebook said they weren't colluding, therefore they weren't colluding. They make the argument, they say that the states are also saying there's new misconduct that has popped up. They link to this opinion piece from the New York Post and another letter, a declaration from a Twitter executive in a federal election commission, looks like a declaration lawsuit or something. Neither source applies or supplies a factual basis for the state's allegations about Chen and Meta. The opinion piece adds nothing new. Instead, it characterizes and opines on a document, but it's not accurate. After the New York Post published articles in October 2020 about a hard drive, the declaration says that Twitter's trust and safety team took action, which we all saw. We lived through this, right? They canceled the entire story. But nothing in that declaration contradicts Meta's letter that Mr. Chen at no point advised Meta, right? So they're saying, okay, all of that may have happened, but Chen specifically, the special agent, he wasn't the one responsible for it. So the government says, in short, there's really no basis for him to come and testify. Mr. Chen and Meta, none of it was collusion between the two of them. They're also pointing to 2 online interviews, and they're saying, you know, these interviews don't justify Mr. Chan's deposition. And they're going through his record, and the government is basically explaining why this guy should not be deposed. And so you understand the point of this. They say, for the reasons stated above in the opening memorandum, the court should withdraw, in other words, reverse authorization of the deposition of Mr. Chen. Signed off on by special counsel, litigation counsel, principal deputy assistant, and we've got Iridan Sir, trial attorney for the U.S. Department of Justice out of the Civil Division in D.C. Okay, please, the nuts and bolts of this, please don't interview the FBI special agent. He's not closely connected. He's not relevant. It doesn't matter, so on and so forth. Now, the judge took all of that into account and issued the following order. Federal judge issuing a memorandum order ordering the continued deposition of Mr. Elvis Chen. He, of course, is FBI assistant in charge, somebody who was allegedly colluding with the big tech companies, being sued by the state of Missouri versus the Biden administration. The judge orders says, for the reasons set forth below, the motion for reconsideration, the beg, please don't depose this guy, is hereby denied. Background. The judge writes as follows. Judge says, on May 5th, the states sued the Biden people, and on August 2nd, they filed an amended complaint. In the complaint, the states allege that Biden and all of those different executive level people colluded with or coerced social media companies to suppress disfavored speakers, viewpoints, and content by labeling the content disinfo, misinfo, and malinfo. The states allege that the suppression disfavored speakers, viewpoints, and content, they say it constitutes government action and it violates the First Amendment. They said that the scope of this inquiry, the scope of this censorship, suppressed speech that covered a bunch of issues. The Hunter Biden laptop story, the prior elections, COVID and lab leaks, masks, mail-in voting, censorship of various people like Dr. J. Bhattacharya, Dr. Aaron K., Barrington Declaration, censorship, Jim Hoff, Gateway Pundit. Okay, all of these people were suppressed. All of it. We covered most of it. Co-director of Freedom Louisiana, Reopen Louisiana on all these platforms. Got it. The court ordered that the plaintiffs, meaning the states, are authorized to take 8 depositions as part of the discovery process. On October 28th, the Biden administration filed a motion for reconsideration. They said, okay, look, we'll let you depose some of these other people, but not Elvis Chen, footnote 7, asking this court to reconsider the previous ruling that authorized it. The judge says, well, while there is no motion for reconsideration per se, there is a motion to alter or amend the judgment under the federal rules of procedure. So this judge is being a little bit picky here. Motion for reconsideration, he's saying, you know, it's kind of not in the rules, but I'll just interpret your request according to a different rule. The Fifth Circuit has explained that a Rule 59 motion calls into question the correctness of a judgment, but is not the proper vehicle for rehashing evidence, legal theories, or arguments that could have been offered or were offered before the entry of judgment. Okay, so the judge is doing the old sort of Iraq format where the judge will tell you what the issue is. Okay, so they're saying this is the issue. Reconsider the previous ruling. That's the I. What's the rule? The rule is the law. The law says, 59E is really the only thing that governs what you're asking me to do. You're asking me to reverse myself. Well, how can I do that? What does the law say? All right, Federal Rules of Civil 59E says I can't go back and rehash old entries. Okay, that's the R. Let's do some analysis now. What's the argument? What's the analysis that we're going to do as we apply the rules to the issue? Okay. In its motion for reconsideration, the judge says, the federal defendants, Biden administration, asked this court to reconsider its previous ruling, authorizing the states to depose Chen. The sole basis for the motion for reconsideration is a recent letter from the attorneys representing Meta, Facebook. The letter stated that Meta did not identify Chen as the person from the FBI that conveyed communications between FBI and Meta that led to the suppression of the laptop story. Now, that statement, the judge says, is disputed by the states. They say that Meta didn't say that. They maintain that in a phone call on September 15th, Meta's counsel orally identified Chen as the FBI official who was directly involved in the Hunter Biden laptop related communications with Facebook. The court held in its ruling that plaintiffs are allowed to depose Chen. Why? 1, because Chen had authority over cybersecurities for the FBI in San Francisco, in California, which includes headquarters of major social media platforms. So he's kind of closely connected there. Chen also played a critical role for the FBI in coordinating with social media platforms related to censorship on those platforms. And 3, because Meta identified Chen as the FBI agent who communicated with Facebook. Meta's counsel identified Chen as the person who communicated with Facebook to suppress the Biden laptop story. So the judge continues and says, well, Chen's alleged involvement in the laptop communications issue was not the sole reason for his depo. Okay, there were other reasons. The court conducted its analysis on whether Chen should be deposed under the assumption that as an assistant special agent in charge of the FBI field office, Chen was a high-ranking official, even though there was scant evidence produced in support of such finding. The court finds that even if Chen were not the person identified by Meta to have conveyed the information to Facebook on the Hunter story, there still exists independent reasons for allowing Chen's deposition. He's like the senior officer there, the senior special agent in San Francisco. The judge says the issue of Chen's involvement in the Hunter laptop communication is an additional reason to allow the states to depose him. If Chen played no role in the suppression of the laptop story, then such information will be made very clear in his deposition, won't it? They'll say, Mr. Chen, were you the person who told Facebook to suspend Hunter Biden's story dissemination? He'll say, no idea who that was. And you'll say, well, you're in charge of the FBI. Shouldn't you figure that out? And he'll say, I'll look into it. And then he'll give him the actual response, and they can go and depose that person. Judge says Chen had authority over cybersecurity issues for the FBI in San Francisco, in California, and that includes the headquarters of major social media platforms, and it played a critical role for the FBI in coordinating with the social media platforms related to censorship. Even if Chen played no role in the Hunter story, he may have knowledge of who did, and his deposition is nonetheless warranted. Therefore, the Biden administration's motion for reconsideration is hereby denied. Conclusion: for the reasons set forth herein, it is ordered that the federal defendant's motion is denied. Signed by Judge Terry Doughty, Monroe, Louisiana, November 14th. Boom. So FBI special agent will be sitting down, and he's going to be asked specifically by Eric Schmitt, seen here from Missouri, what his role was, what his involvement was in covering up or encouraging the social media platforms to cover up the Hunter Biden story. Great news. A lot of fun on that. And so we'll see what happens as these depositions get scheduled. We'll continue to cover them. Thank you for liking this video wherever it is you're watching it, and for joining us on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, that was it for us on the day. Man, we covered some serious segments here today. Hopefully we see everybody back here tomorrow when, to hopefully be here before nuclear annihilation takes us all out. The Russian missile attack, allegedly, we've got that covered. We learned about FBI agents being embedded now with the Proud Boys, in addition to the Oath Keepers and everybody else. They're also there with the Proud Boys. And we wrapped up by talking about Missouri winning a deposition of Elvis. And it's going to be a lot of fun to see how those depositions unfold. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you and to see what you have to say. I see some serious activity in the chat tonight. Shout out to Shane Souza. I see Lean says, what happened to the announcement? I think that's talking about the Trump announcement. He's going to be announcing that later tonight. I think he's 7 my time, 9 p.m. Eastern time is when he is evidently going to be making that announcement. We will not be covering it live here. I have an event tonight that I have to attend to. But of course, I'm sure other people will be streaming it, and other people will be talking about it. Probably people like Fair and Balanced. I'm not sure what she's doing tonight, but she swung by. She says, thanks for covering this, Robert. It's a tough subject and a sticky one at that when it comes to the YouTube gods. Keep up the great work before World War III. I know. We try to thread the needle here, Fair and Balanced. And so shout out to Fair and Balanced. Thank you for swinging by. Hey, by the way, Fair and Balanced is on YouTube, and we had a great interview, a date night with Rob Govea. It was a very great interview. I mean, we talked for like 3 hours almost. It was very fun. If you haven't checked it out, please go over to Fair and Balanced channel and check it out. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button, because she does great work and she's a ton of fun. And so, yeah, it is a little bit of a sticky one on YouTube. Hopefully I don't get another strike for that one, but we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. It's just how this game is played. We have Box Lane Productions says in the house, says, so do we have to change our profile pictures again, or are we all good for a bit? I think you're talking, it depends where you're going. Mask, no mask, Ukraine. Do you have to go to the Ukraine flag? Do you have to put a masked Ukraine flag up on your Twitter profile? It's very complicated business. Or do you have to put the frame that says, I don't support nuclear annihilation. Save the animals, save the planet, something like that. All right. So yeah, so that's from Box Lane Productions. Thank you, Box Lane. TKUA says, would you give up parts of the U.S. for, quote, piece of our time? No. Well, first of all, I don't know what that even means, right? Piece of our time, which is why that's sort of a non-starter. I don't even know what that means. There's a lot of that type of talk. And I think all of the people who promise us salvation are mostly liars. Most of them are liars. There's only, depending on what your personal belief is, right? There's only sort of one path or whatever to salvation, depending on what you believe. But anybody who promises us, oh, we're going to make this deal or this negotiated treaty or whatever, I'm very skeptical about it. And so if anybody promised piece of our time to give up portions of the United States, no, I'd be very skeptical about that. But I think I understand your point, TK. I think you're trying to say, maybe you're not, I don't know. But it's like, would I encourage Ukraine to settle, right? If I applied the same standard to Ukraine, right? If we said, hey, Ukraine, you've got to give up part of your country to have piece of our time. And it's a stupid thing. That's not what my argument would be. My argument would be, well, it's because you're in a pretty bad situation right now. And the world is on the edge of global annihilation if this continues to escalate. So that would be my argument. It wouldn't be peace of our time. But, you know, there's more to that story. And I think you can make a good argument for that. Yeah, it sucks. Like, nobody wants you to have to do this. Like, I'm not thrilled about it. But yeah, there does need to be some sort of an off-ramp on the whole ordeal. Raider Gain says the media was really reckless with this story. They were reckless. It's like, holy crap, what is going on here? They're just going nuts on some of this. Everybody wants World War III. Fair and balanced, as I said, get on over to her channel. Chris Wolney is here, says nothing happens to government for Brady violation. Never, I know. It drives me nuts. I mean, I almost blew a gasket here today. Gosh, drives me nuts. These stinking prosecutors dropping hundreds of pages of documents 30 days before trial. Oh, by the way, look what we found. Idiots. Drives me nuts. All right. And those were the super chats that came in on YouTube. Let me see if I missed anything. I see some activity over on the Rumbles now. Now, shout out to Rumble. Who's chatting away over there? Eric Scorpio. We've got Dog Diggers in the house. Robin Lane's in the house. R. Graceful. Sedona Rocks is over there. Alan Harkin. Shout out to Alan. And everybody else who's watching over on Rumble. Shout out to our Rumble friends. A lot of lurkers over there. I see a lot of people watching, but not too many people chatting. A lot of lurkers over there. Same story on Facebook. And so shout out to all of our lurker friends, including all of our locals lurkers. We've got a lot of them over there too. But hey, shout out to Greg. I see you lurking over there. What's up, Greg? What's up, Ellen Fly? What's up, Bye Bye Biden? What's up, Carla Sue? All right, everybody. Well, I think that about does it for us on the day. We did cover some serious business, but we are going to be back tomorrow to do it all again. We'll be back tomorrow at regular time. And boy, oh boy, is there going to be, I'm sure, a lot to talk about after the Trump announcement takes place tonight. We did a preview. If you missed, if you're interested in some Trump stuff, I did a little walk and talk this morning. You may have missed it. So check that out. We talked, it was a Trump preview, some thoughts on how the announcement may go tonight and how the Republican Party is probably going to continue to slice itself to death in the foreseeable future. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but we'll see. But of course, check that out, of course. And we are about done for the day. Before we wrap up, I want to thank our amazing sponsors. Of course, check out Goldco. RobertLikesGold.com. I appreciate you going and supporting our sponsors. Also, forpatriots.com. Use promo code Robert so that you have some food in case nuclear Armageddon strikes. You got to have your survival food. And of course, gold is another good thing to have too, because in nuclear explosions, gold will probably survive. You might not, but the gold will. And of course, our law firm over at the R&R Law Group. Thank you for sending good people charged with crime, people who need help, people who are in a difficult position, who are trying to get things back on track, right? That's what our law firm does. R&R Law Group, we offer free case evaluations, awesome team of people, 480-787-0394. We're very passionate about the work that we do. Thank you for keeping your antennas poised for people that we can help. We offer free case evaluations. Our mission is to help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope. And we are very passionate about our work. And so thank you for sending them our way. Also, thank you to the mods who modded down the fort for us. Shout outs to Vientikis, K Bean, I see Just Cause is in the house. Shout out to Just Cause says, I want to see Rob with a golden grill. Make this happen. Getting golden? I'm going to need a lot more super chats. Platinum with diamonds? Going to need a lot more super chats. Just Cause. Lean says, Rob, can we have a longer show tomorrow, Rob? Yeah, we'll see about that. I have a dinner tonight, so I sort of had to wrap it up here a little bit longer today. But yeah, we went longer yesterday too, right? We went about 2 hours. Today's about an hour 38, 39. Just Cause, I see Lean playing hookies in the house as well. Ronnie Cole, shout out to Ronnie. Ronnie said something. Said Elvis should do some concerts. Yeah, didn't look like Elvis, but maybe he sings like Elvis or moves like Elvis. Don't know. Shout outs to Zulu. Says Rob's a busy guy. Yeah. Sometimes. Shout outs to Zulu. I appreciate you being here. And Gio and Henry swing by from time to time. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. Now, we are going over to locals. We have a little bit of an after party and some comments to attend to over there. And so I'm going to dinner. I've got a big, long dinner tonight. Yeah. It's kind of a networking dinner thing. It's not like a personal dinner. It's sort of, group of people. It's going to be fun. But that is it for us on the day. We will be back here tomorrow to do it all again. And I hope to see you here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.